Post the colors. Present arms. Color guard, take your post.
We'll now hear the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you. Please be seated now. Honor guard, representatives of the Sons of the American Revolution, and we're delighted to have them with us today. I'm Charlie Bachman, for those of you who don't know me, and I'm honored to be Connie's husband of 62 years. And we're here today to honor a mystery. You know, the Purple Heart Medal that was given to her brother, Tom Hadley. We don't quite know the story of it, so that's what our morning program is. Now, in the front here, just quickly, our visitors, we have our children and our grandchildren and our grandchildren's spouses. It's very complicated. And some extended family as well. We have our U.S. Representative Ed Markey sitting in front. He will speak to you in just a moment. We have our Massachusetts Representative Jay Kaufman sitting here, and he will speak to us in a little minutes. And then we have Dan Finn here, who's well known to most people in Lexington as the official director of the Kennedy Library. We also want to greet the members of the Lexington Veterans Association who have been invited, some have come along to join us, and all the other guests and friends from Brookhaven. So thank you very much for being here. And we're going to start. Ed Markey, would you please take over?
Thank you. So I am Congressman Ed Markey, and I am the congressman from Lexington, Massachusetts, the place where the shot heard round the world was fired. And it is from that moment in American history, in world history, that a new view of what the rights of ordinary people should be, not only here, but all around the world. And it inspired people everywhere in the world. And so it is altogether fitting and proper that we have this event here in Lexington, because the service of Thomas Earl Hadley is the pluperfect form of the commitment to ensuring that that people are able to live free around the world, is a symbol. So, Charlie, I thank you so much. And Connie, thank you. Thank you for the tenacity that your family has had in its commitment to your brother and his service, and to all of the rest of your family.
Thank you for coming.
I wouldn't miss it. I wouldn't miss it. And I learned here earlier that Charlie's father was the coach of the Michigan State football team. Connie went to Michigan State and met Charlie there, but Thomas went to the University of Michigan. Okay, so we here we can understand this Lexington Concord thing right here. Okay, we understand the tension that can be created. And it's great to be here with my great friend, Representative Jay Kaufman, who is the chair of the Joint Committee on Revenue up in the Massachusetts State Legislature, and he ensures that every veteran is able to receive all of the benefits which they are entitled to as they come back here to Massachusetts after all of their service. And we thank you, Jay, for being here as well. I know Shandini works up in the Capitol building in Washington, where I work, and that is, something that I feel does reflect the family commitment to our country and to patriotism and everything that we stand for as a nation. And I thank the Military Order of the Purple Heart. I know that Captain Fike is here, and I thank you for all that you have done to help make today's event possible. And most importantly, I want to thank all of the veterans who are here as well. How many veterans are in the audience here? Beautiful, thank you. Can you all stand up so we can see who you all are? Beautiful. That is beautiful. I married, my wife retired as a two-star admiral. A Jewish two-star admiral, the only two-star admiral I think since Noah. Okay, and so I made it up to specialist 4th class. So there's always been an asymmetry in our relationship at home. But we thank all of you here for your tremendous service to our country. And I also want to mention at this point Larry Moore. Larry Moore is the man who found that his father had a medal that had the name of Thomas Hadley on it, and decided that he would ensure that that medal would be given to the family of the man who had earned that great honor. So it was 236 years ago here in Lexington that Americans fought mightily to defeat tyranny and earn their freedom. And we as a nation have fought ever since to preserve, to protect, and promote liberty throughout the world. On June 25th, 1950, 90,000 North Korean troops poured across the border and invaded South Korea. Young men and women from Lexington to Los Angeles and all places in between answered the call. Thomas Hadley answered that call from the state of Michigan. President Truman knew that the 38th parallel was not just a line on a map. The 38th parallel was a line in the sand that America drew during the Cold War. It was a place where America said that no free nation on earth should have to stand alone in their fight against communism. 1.7 million American heroes answered the call and served in the Korean War. They answered the call to defend a country they never knew and a people they never met. 103,000 were wounded in action. 54,000 Americans were killed in action. On the Korean War Memorial in Washington, D.C., on a small slab of granite, the words "freedom is never free" is etched in stone for eternity. Among those American heroes killed in action was Thomas Earl Hadley Jr. Thomas was a freshman at the University of Michigan when he decided to leave the safe confines of Ann Arbor and enlist in the United States Air Force. He became a fighter pilot in the Korean War and flew the F-80C Shooting Star Fighter Interceptor with the 36th Fighter Bomber Squadron. On November 9th, 1951, while on a combat mission, his plane came under fire, rolled over, and crashed into a hill near Kangdong, North Korea. First Lieutenant Hadley was awarded the Distinguished Flying Cross, the Air Medal with Oak Leaf Cluster, the Korean Service Medal, the United States Service Medal, and most importantly, and the reason why we are here today, the Purple Heart. Through Thomas's efforts and those of every sailor, soldier, airman, and Marine who fought during the Korean War, liberty was preserved, freedom was saved, and democracy reigned supreme throughout the entire world. And a country called South Korea is able to be distinguished from North Korea, a country that came to live under that oppression that Thomas was fighting so hard. That is his legacy to all of those people and to everyone else on the planet. And as a result of that war, there was a continuation of the recognition that the United States is the greatest and most respected democratic nation in the history of the world. 54,000 lives, including Thomas Hadley, were lost during that war. While it's often referred to as the forgotten war, we will never forget the sacrifices that each of those brave men and women made for our country. Today, we are here to honor all those Korean War veterans who served and remember those like Thomas who made the ultimate sacrifice. We thank them for their service, for their courage, for their patriotism. We pray for them. We ask God's blessing upon them, and may God bless the United States of America. In honor of Thomas's sacrifice, I had a flag flown over the United States Capitol for today's event. Chandini knows that for special occasions, above the Capitol dome, a member of Congress can ask for a flag to be flown in commemoration of the service of an American to our country. And so on Friday, I asked for this flag to fly over the Capitol dome of the United States of America in commemoration of Thomas's sacrifice and commitment to our country. And this is the certificate that authenticates that on this day, all across our country, we honor his great sacrifice. And I would like to give this to you, Connie, in memory of your brother's great sacrifice and your family's sacrifice for our country. Thank you so, so much.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you. Very marvelous. Now I'd like to ask Jay Kaufman to come up, and another one of our strong representatives.
Thank you, Charlie. It's always very difficult to follow Congressman Markey in the speaking order. But having said that, we can do no better than to follow Congressman Markey in terms of public service and commitment to this nation, to this Commonwealth, and to this community. So, Ed, Congressman Markey, thank you very much for your service. And for your example. The Congressman mentioned that we're here to honor Tom, your brother. We're also here to celebrate many things. We celebrate Tom for his service, his commitment, his sacrifice, and through him, the other veterans in the room and the other veterans across this country and the men and women who are fighting in our name even as we sit here comfortably. This nation has known far too many wars, and the only silver lining there is that we have heroes, albeit far too many heroes, who have given their all to make this nation the great nation that it is. So we celebrate Tom for his service as well as for his sacrifice. We also celebrate the fairy tale that is the story of the return of this medal to this family. We are about to hear some of the details of that story. Some may never be known. But in any event, there's a bit of a fairy tale that goes with every moment of that medal's travels, from the moment it was presented to the moment where it will find its new home here today. So we celebrate that fairy tale and all the people who contributed to it. And last, we celebrate the family. And Chandini, I didn't know that you worked in the Capitol, but it seems to me that we should be here at some point and give you a Medal of Honor or a combat medal for your service in Washington, given my understanding of life in the Capitol now. But whether or not we ever have that ceremony, we celebrate your entire family, because behind every soldier, behind every public servant, behind every one of us, there is a family. And the story of Tom's life tells us a great deal about this family And I know the legacy that he has left to those of you who are here today is an important one, and it's a legacy that's left to all of us. And we share the honor and special nature of that with you because you are part of it as well. So thank you very much, and we celebrate all of you.
Am I connected on now? Yes. Our next speaker is Leon Brown, who represents the military order, the Purple Heart Association. I've asked him to come up and tell you a little about the history of the organization itself, so you'll understand that and understand about the medal. So Leon, where are you?
Right here.
There you are. Thank you, sir.
Good morning. My name is Leon Brown, and I'm the commander for the Military Order of Purple Heart, the Department of Connecticut. When they called me and asked me to come here this morning, I couldn't refuse. I mean, this is an honor. It's really an honor for me to be here. So on behalf of our organization, to the family of Lieutenant Hadley, I'll talk to you briefly about the medal itself. I brought with me this morning a replica of what started out as the Purple Heart. It was authorized by General George Washington on August 7th, 1782, as the badge of military merit. Now, he was prohibited from rewarding the soldiers in the Continental Army by giving them promotions, etc., because the Congress had no money to pay for them. So he resorted to whatever means he could to recognize his soldiers. So he directed that the badge of military merit be cut in the figure of a heart in purple cloth or silk, edged with narrow lace or binding. He ordered that it be awarded whenever any singular meritorious action is performed and worn on the left breast of the tunic of the uniform. Only 3 soldiers that we're aware of were given this badge. Sergeant Elijah Churchill from the 2nd Regiment Light Dragoons, Sergeant William Brown, 5th Connecticut Regiment, and Sergeant Daniel Bissell, 2nd Connecticut Regiment. I'm proud to say that all 3 of those Revolutionary soldiers were Connecticut soldiers. Now, when the war was over and the Army was disbanded, the badge of military merit passed into history. That is, at least until February 22nd, 1932, on the 200th anniversary of Washington's birth, General Douglas MacArthur, then War Department Chief of Staff, announced the restoration of the Purple Heart for use by the U.S. Army. The modern medal is reminiscent of Washington's badge with its heart shape, but it now contains a likeness of Washington and his family's coat of arms. This medal can only be given to military personnel serving with one of the U.S. Armed Forces since April 5th, 1917, that have been killed or wounded under a specific set of circumstances, while only 3 were given to Revolutionary War services. An estimated 1.7 million have been given since World War I. That's up to and including ongoing operations in Afghanistan. So, on behalf of the Military Order of the Purple Heart, we have some 43,000 members in 49 departments and some 499 chapters. On behalf of the organization, I'm proud to be here to witness the restoration or the return of this medal to the family of Lieutenant Thomas Hadley, and we salute Lieutenant Hadley. Thank you very much.
Now, this thing is about a mystery. Right now, the agenda says that there's something about the young Tom Hadley, his sister, Connie Hadley Bachman. It wasn't clear to me whether she's going to get up or our daughter Chandler is going to get up to speak.
You both get up together.
Okay, good. Thank you.
people in crowds, and I have dreadful stage fright. And so I had asked Chandani if she would please do the talk for me because I would cry. And yes, I will cry, and then she can take over. My brother was 2 years younger than I. Here I go. And he was the typical pesty brother, younger brother of a perfect girl. And he was always breaking my doll dishes and taking apart my clock and bicycle because he was an engineer. And he loved adventure, and he would go off on an adventure without telling his parents or me where he was going. So he was late for supper, and at dinner, in fact, he was a clown. He would take a piece of white bread, you know, we used to eat white bread, and bite a hole out of the middle of it, and then go around like this. And there were only 4 at the table. He didn't need much of an audience. And then he went off to war, and I'm a pacifist, but Tom convinced me that this was a war worth fighting. While I recover, you take over.
Okay, so my Uncle Tom was the groomsman at my parents' wedding, and so he liked to call my father an uncle maker, and so my father made him an uncle because I'm the firstborn.
We have 4 children: Sarah, Chandani, John, and Thomas, who is named after my brother, who couldn't be here. He lives in Phoenix, Arizona. And what else? He really felt compelled to go to this war. And he loved airplanes. He learned how to fly when he was in high school, just like you did, John. And he was thrilled with it was the Army Air Force then, or just, joined the Air Force just as it became the Air Force. It had been known as the Army Air Corps. And remember that, Dan? Mm-hmm. Yes. And when I went out to the graduation ceremony, when the men received their wings, and it was interesting. I was as tall as, no, a little taller than I am now. And all of the pilots, I went to a dance after the ceremony, all of the pilots came to about here on me. And I thought, I'm taller than all of them, and I was only 5'7". And then I realized that fighter pilots get into very small airplanes, and there's not room for someone Charlie Bachman's size. And one of the interesting things, when he graduated, the class, they had 3 men who were the top cadets, and they were given permanent Air Force commission, and the others had to go into the reserves. Yes. And one of the other ones was Gus Grissom, who became an astronaut. And I didn't find that out until about the 80s, when I was, here I go, going through my brother's things in my parents' house, and I ran across the graduation book. And that's when I found out that Virgil Grissom was one of the three top, and so was Tom
Hadley.
Bachman, Tom Hadley, yes. So I guess that's
Did
it.
well.
Yeah. And thank you all for coming. I'm just thrilled that you're here.
According to my agenda here, I'm supposed to speak about Lieutenant Thomas Earl Hadley II as the pilot. Now, some other speakers have been ahead of me and said some of the things I might have said. So I'm going to make it short so we can get on to the mystery itself. Now, Tom enlisted in the Air Force training program in 1950. His primary training was at Perrin Air Force Base. He went from there to Williams Air Force Base, where he got his advanced flight training. From there, he went to Nellis Air Force Base in Las Vegas. And there, Tom met and married Julie Day just before departing for Korea in July 1951. Tom was wounded in action in August, not the November date you heard about, but he was wounded in action in August 1929 and won the Purple Heart and the Air Medal at that time. And it's our thought, although we're not absolutely sure, that that is the particular Purple Heart that Connie's going to receive back today. There's names engraved but no dates on it. And we have the certificate that came from the War Department about his being awarded those medals. Now, Tom was just completing his 50th mission. We've been on a rail striking where they're out and trying to shoot up trains, bringing supplies down from China and northern Korea. And they were on their way back to base when they got a call from another pilot that they're doing a similar mission, that they are having trouble and they needed covering fire. So that they turned around, went back where they'd been, and they found that one of the planes, the other flights was going down slowly, losing altitude and being shot at. And Tom's plane dove in and strafed the gunning position and drew their fire so that the other pilot could escape and got home safely. And Tom's plane went in, shot up the gun nest, and pulled up and then turned and crashed in the ground and burned there. Now, it was late in the day and a lot of North Korean troops there, so there's no way they could send a helicopter in to search and look for the downed plane at that time. So he was declared missing in action. And one of the interesting things that hasn't been mentioned is that at the same time they received the Distinguished Flying Cross of the highest medal of the Air Force, along came a proclamation personally assigned by President Eisenhower, acknowledging his service to the nation beyond the call of duty. Now, 5 years later, they were able to get into North Korea, and the Grave Registration Group was able to find the aircraft and the remains of it, and removed Tom's remains and brought him back to the United States. And he was buried in a family grave site in Holly, Michigan, and Connie and I were there at that time. So at this point, we need to get on to the meat of this thing, the mystery of the long forgotten but newly found Purple Heart. And Larry Moore, who is the person who discovered this, could not be with us. So our daughter Sarah, who is right here, is going to come and she's going to talk about a video. She went down to Philadelphia, visited Larry Moore, and they brought him a tape back so he could be here for you to see him even though he couldn't make it himself. So Sarah, please.
Well, when I first heard about this entire entire mystery. And I think a lot of us are really touched by it. You don't have to be a part of our family to know how special this is. I really felt like Mr. Moore, Larry Moore, was really at the heart of the story, that we can't have this ceremony without him. And he is unfortunately not able to join us today. He had a disability, an injury on the job. He is a policeman in a suburb of Philadelphia, and he had some surgery, and then he's been in rehab. He's working really hard to get well, but he doesn't have the ability to be with us today. And so he and I spoke by phone several times, and I said, you know what, I have a friend who's a videographer, and Alex and I hopped in a car, and we went and met with Larry and with his family, and we had a lovely afternoon. And what you're going to see here is just a short video that is basically Larry speaking to you because he is not able to be here today, and he tells a bit about his story.
The story goes back to where I was a little kid, and you do what most little kids do. You sneak around and you look in your parents' jewelry boxes and things you're not supposed to do when they're not there. Now my mother's sitting here, she knows this, but I would look in there, and he would have, my father used to have his class ring and some old coins, and then I had found this, at the time not knowing what it was, but I found this Purple Heart in there. When your father actually emailed me the first picture of your uncle, it was kind of, it was great to finally have a face with the name that I've read numerous times since I was a little kid. I know my father had tried before, but back in the 60s, 70s, without the internet, you can't find it. You don't have a phone number, you can't get a hold of people. I didn't know how old, where this was dated from. So I know it was a World War I Purple Heart, and there would be no family interested in it. I mean, let's face the fact, the way the world is today, I was afraid that Captain Flight would call something, he'd be like, we remember him. Oh, really? Yeah, send it to us. And that's what I was afraid would happen. I'm glad that your mother's so excited to get it back. That makes me excited, just that alone. Well, I think the reason my father kept it all the years too is he was a Marine Corps veteran from the Korean War era, and so he was one of those diehard once Marine, always Marine guys. So he wasn't going to just discard this thing and throw it out. The story that I was always told was that my grandfather had found it, and he was the superintendent of the sanitation department of Darby Township, which is just outside of Philadelphia. But that was it. We never knew where he found it, how he found it. He found it on the ground, he found it in trash. We had no idea how he got it, other than he found it. And my grandfather passed away in 1967, and then my father unfortunately passed away a year ago, February 2nd, 2011. So going through his personal belongings, I took that medal, and always had seen the name on the back. It was always Thomas E. Hadley II, which I had asked my mother, and we didn't know anybody by that name. My father always knew it wasn't from our family. I always thought maybe it was someone in the neighborhood, maybe it was a friend or something, but there was no ties to us. I was sitting here one day, my daughter's laptop, I grabbed it, and I sent out a few emails to different, Google and different things about Purple Hearts. And I emailed them out and heard nothing. My father passed away in February. I was just in December, it hit me again, hey, I never heard anything back about this thing. And actually the medal sat in that glass jar in my living room here the whole time. So I was here one night, a week or so, 2 weeks before Christmas, I was by myself, I grabbed the laptop again, grabbed the Purple Heart, started Googling. This time I somehow come up with the military order of the Purple Heart. The commander was a gentleman by the name of Bill Hutton. And remind you, from February to December, I heard nothing about this thing. I emailed Mr. Hutton, telling him what I had. And at that time, I'm thinking maybe it's not even a real Purple Heart, and that's why no one even took the time to email me back. But I emailed Mr. Hutton, and I believe it was a matter of hours I had an email back that he had forwarded to a gentleman by the name of Mr. Bircher, and then he emailed me back that he had forwarded to a friend of his named Captain Zachariah Fike, who, I don't remember if correctly it was that night, but I know within the next day or so, I had a phone call from the captain. And I told him what I had, and he told me he would research it. And I know it was within a matter of days that he had gotten back to me and confirmed it was a real Purple Heart. It was probably, and he had sent all the information on it, Thomas, First Lieutenant Thomas E. Hadley, who was killed in Korea in 1951, November, I believe it was the 9th of 1951. He gave me the whole story of his military history, the squadron he flew with, the type of airplane he flew. But then it became an email thing back and forth, and I know again it was only a matter of days after that he had contacted me that he actually found Thomas's sister, your mother, Constance Hadley Bachman, up in Lexington, Massachusetts. I forget who the heck I'd even emailed before, but I think I sent about 3 or 4 emails trying to find something about it. But something just happened that one night I picked up the laptop and got the right people. And you know, I'm telling you, the matter of what I didn't hear in 10 months, it was less than 10 days. We had confirmed it was real, who had it. The big mystery still is how it got to Upper Darby. We don't have a clue, since your family was from Michigan, and I've never been to Michigan. My family's never lived out in Michigan. We've always been in Delaware County, Pennsylvania. And unfortunately, I can't be with you guys on the 18th, but you know, I'm there with you anyway, just know that. And I'm just glad this thing is finally, this Purple Heart Medal is back in the hands of the proper family and the people that deserve to have it.
Am I live? Yes. Well, the next important thing we get past this medal on to Captain Zachary Fike, who's sitting over here. And we're delighted to have him come and tell the next part of the story. So Zach, thank you very much.
Those are some tough acts to follow. It's not easy going last, but I'll do my best. Mr. Congressman, Mr. Kaufman, Mr. Brown, Connie, Charlie, thank you for having me here today. Other distinguished guests. I always make a tradition during these events to honor someone very special to me. Not to take away from Lieutenant Hadley or any other veteran in this room, but to send your son to war not only once, but twice has to be a difficult thing. So Mom, if you could please stand. I love you. Finding Connie, believe it or not, was fairly easy. Thankfully, it didn't take as long as I thought it would. But again, that was the easy part of it. The hardest part, in my opinion, was just honoring Lieutenant Hadley appropriately. And I'm glad that you could all be here today. The date was 9 November 1951. Lieutenant Thomas Hadley was completing his 50th combat mission. This in itself was a great accomplishment. 50 missions during that time was a great success. He would have been considered an ace of his time, classed among great Korean war pilots such as John Glenn and Neil Armstrong. Thomas says today they would consider him to be a top gun. A battle-hardened leader of men who was previously wounded during combat flight, as Charlie mentioned before, simply a force to be reckoned with. As he was completing his mission, he received word to return to flight to provide overhead cover for ground forces in trouble. As the battle ensued, one of Thomas's friends, his wingman and best friend, Lieutenant Edward Faulkner's aircraft was hit by enemy fire 3 times and struggling to maintain altitude. Without hesitation, Thomas sprung into action. Now I remind you that Thomas had already completed his mission for the day, so he had already dropped his bombs, which means he was restricted to his smaller guns and confined to close combat. As Lieutenant Faulkner's aircraft was just 6 feet above the ground and completely defenseless, he was struggling to maneuver away from the village he was over because he did have his bombs and he knew if he crashed, he would kill innocent people. But the Korean Army didn't care. They went in for the kill, and they maneuvered their guns to take out Lieutenant Faulkner. When suddenly, Lieutenant Faulkner saw an iron angel swooping from above. Guns ablazing, But this wasn't just your average angel. It was Lieutenant Thomas Hadley. The enemy gun position immediately directed their fire away from Lieutenant Faulkner and towards Thomas's aircraft. And unfortunately, they scored a direct hit. With seconds to spare, Thomas made a final and heroic decision to crash his aircraft not onto an open field with the possibility of survival, but he tried his best to crash directly into the gun position, killing the enemy and ultimately saving the life of his friend and an entire Korean village. One of my favorite quotes from the book of John, chapter 15, verse 13, "Greater love have no man than this, that a man lay down his life for his friends." For his actions, he was awarded the highest honor within the Air Force, the Distinguished Flying Cross. Thomas sacrificed his life so that others may live. I had a chance to speak to Lieutenant Faulkner's daughter the other day. Unfortunately, Lieutenant Faulkner died in 2006. Her father would tell her stories of Lieutenant Hadley almost yearly. The loss of his wingman and his best friend haunted him for the rest of his life. But he kept this close to his heart, and he always kept his head up. He got married, he had 2 wonderful sons and a daughter, and he was a successful engineer. He owed all of this to Thomas. President Eisenhower said it best. He stands in the unbroken line of patriots who dared to die that freedom may live and grow and increase its blessings. Freedom lives, and through it, he lives, in a way that humbles the undertakings of most men. Now, before I present the medals to Thomas's sister Connie, I ask you not to be sad today, but to celebrate Thomas's life as he was a true American hero. A hero much like many of you here today. I know we did this before, but I think it's appropriate to do it again. I ask that all veterans again here today, past and present, please stand and be recognized. On behalf of the grateful nation, we salute you all. Thank you. I leave you with one simple request. Ask yourself how you can honor a veteran. I ask that the next time you're walking down the street and you see that veteran proudly wearing his hat that says World War II, Korea, Vietnam, Desert Storm, Iraq, or Afghanistan, we don't ask for much, but a simple handshake and a thank you goes a long way. God bless Thomas E. Hadley, and God bless the United States of America. At this time, we'll present the medals. On behalf of Larry Moore and myself, this is a great honor. Proud to bring Thomas's Purple Heart back.
Thank you. Everyone is welcome to come up and look at it. And
Congressman Markey's asking the whole family.
Yeah, why don't the whole family get up there?
And the Sons of the American Revolution.
Yeah.
Everyone just look right this way. Okay.
Thank you. I'd like to thank you all very much for coming and helping us share this important moment. Thank you all.
I gotta praise the 4-year-old. You did so good. You're gonna go to the toy store later. You know when you go pulling in the